Hello everybody and welcome back to Brothers in Air. Back again with the FLASHPUP as usual. And today I'm going to show you how to adjust your hammer spring tension so that you can tune your valve strike, and you can create changes in your velocity, and you can increase your velocities or decrease your velocities with a harder or either softer hammer strike on the valve. And I'm also going to explain to you not just how to do it, but how I do it, and I'm going to go over the reasons why I do it that way. But first I want to talk about some other tuning stuff. And tuning can be all kinds of things when it comes to a PCP air gun. There's just a plethora of things that you can do to tune an air gun, and that can be everything from breaking it down and lubing things up, maybe polishing stuff. There's just so many things you can do. Trigger work, whatever it is, hammer adjustments, strike adjustments, and velocity adjustments. There's just so many things that can encompass tuning an air gun. You could be modifying or swapping out internal parts on the gun, or like I said, polishing things and trying to improve upon the gun's fluidity and overall function. You can do things to increase accuracy, and different things you can do in tuning to increase your ability to accurately shoot the gun. There's so many things that you can do. So out of the different tuning videos that I'm going to make about the FLASHPUP, I'm going to kind of section it off, because like I said, there's just so many things that can encompass tuning. So one of the first things, I'm just going to say the most important thing, and this is just my opinion, but I would say that the absolute most important step in tuning an air rifle, and maybe some people would say that this isn't necessarily tuning, but I would say that it's definitely a necessary step in that process. So anytime that you do anything to test, record data, or alter or improve the gun's function or accuracy, I would call that tuning the air rifle. So I would say finding the gun's favorite pellet is part of the tuning process. And like I said, it is absolutely the most necessary part of that process. And if you just purchase a PCP air gun, say in .22 caliber, and you just head out to your local Walmart and buy a tin of Crossman pellets and head out in the backyard and start shooting, and you can't shoot a group for nothing. You think it's you think the gun's crap. I'm here to tell you that every single air gun that I own, when using different pellets and different grain weights and different brands, can produce everything from atrociously horrible groups to excellent groups, all based on nothing more than different brands and different weights of pellets. So absolutely a necessary step in the tuning process, and vital. If you don't do anything else, you absolutely should invest the time and the money into finding your particular gun's barrel its favorite pellet. So now that that's out of the way, a chronograph. A chronograph is not an essential thing to have, but it is, I couldn't do without one. Of course you can make alterations to your gun, or change the strength of your valve strike and obtain greater velocities or lesser velocities, and of course you can put a target out and fill your gun up and shoot your whole entire shot string from full to empty, and look at the target, and you can find out where your power curve is in there, and where you can find your most consistent shots. But if you don't know how fast your pellet's going, you're in the dark as far as so many things, and you definitely wouldn't be able to use any type of ballistic software or really do any type of calculations or anything that way. So I would say if you don't have a chronograph and you're already thinking about buying your next PCP air gun or saving money for it, I would say, man, just take the $100, invest, get yourself a chronny, and it's a game changer, and it'll just make your whole tuning process that much more fun too, and it'll just open up a whole world of things that you can do, and different things that you can test and record data and stuff like that. And so I would recommend it for anyone that owns a PCP air gun to also purchase a chronograph, but like I said, definitely not a necessity as far as owning a gun or being able to hunt or shoot one. And it absolutely isn't a necessity, but it absolutely is an awesome tool for tuning a PCP air gun. So with that being said, get a chronograph, because everything I'm going to say and show in this video is based on having a chronograph. Alright, so let me just talk a little bit for a minute about my tuning philosophy a couple years ago. All I wanted to do was produce foot-pounds of energy. Of course, I wanted my guns to be accurate, and I wanted to, hit my mark. But more than anything, I wanted to produce foot-pounds of energy. And the more foot-pounds of energy that I could produce with any given PCP air gun, it was that much cooler of a gun than it was before, when it wasn't shooting that hard, and that hot and that fast. I was after velocity, I was after energy and that smackdown, and also, with the theory always in mind that the faster you can get a pellet, any pellet, from point A to point B, the less it's going to be affected by wind and any other external factors. It's even the faster it's going to get out of the barrel, so that less of this can affect things. That was my thought process always. And whether it was drilling out transfer ports or changing out hammer springs or just hammer spring adjustments, whatever it was, I was always after those foot-pounds of energy. And then I would tune the guns that way, for as many foot-pounds as I could possibly get, without any consideration for air consumption or efficiency, number of shots, and definitely without any consideration for accuracy. I would just tune the guns this way, and then I would go out and shoot my groups at different distances, and I would get my results, and I would say, that's it. That's what this particular air gun is capable of producing. And even if I saw somebody on YouTube or something post a video and they were shooting better groups, I even thought, well, that's just their gun. It's just mine doesn't shoot as well. So, like I said, that was my tuning philosophy up to a couple years ago. And then I saw a video on YouTube on Ted's Holdover. Ted Beer is his name if you're not familiar. And he put out a video called How I Won Extreme Benchrest 2016. And he won the main meet of the competition, the 75 and 100 yard, that year. He won it. He was the leader, and he took the competition. So anyways, I'll leave a link in the description so that you guys can find the video easily, and you can watch it too. But I wanted to show you this clip, just a little short clip of just this one part, because when I saw this, I had never heard anybody say anything like this when it came to PCPs or air gunning. I just hadn't at that point, and I definitely in my own tuning had never even considered doing anything like this. So my whole tuning philosophy and everything that I was doing took a complete 180 once I saw this video. That's what started it all. And so I owe it all to him, and all the credit to him. His videos throughout the years have been probably definitely some of the most educational videos that I've ever had the pleasure to watch, and fellow Wisconsinite and fellow Packer fan, so always kind of felt relatable that way, but needless to say, like I said, he's done so much, in my opinion, for the airgun community with his videos and his contributions that way as a learning tool and stuff like that. So all the credit goes to him, and he deserves it. And so check out this clip real quick, because like I said, this is the absolutely the reason that I started to think different. It's the reason I started to tune different. It's the reason I started to test things and do things different. And the end result was exceptional increases in accuracy and smaller group size and more control and more predictability in windy conditions, especially in windy conditions. More control, more predictability, and more consistency in my shooting and stuff. So check this out real quick, and after that we'll talk about it just a little more. So here it goes.
Another thing that I did was shot for groups in those horrible conditions at different speeds. So I found out that 860 feet per second was a really great speed in ideal conditions, but in crazy windy conditions, the pellet had a chance of destabilizing. And not a good one, but maybe 1 in 8, 1 in 10. That's too dang much. When you have 30 targets you're shooting at, 3 errant flyers kills you. You're done. And so I didn't have none in competition. My worst shot was a 7. I think I had 2 or 3 of them. Everything else, 8, 9, 10. So what I found out when shooting in these mad conditions was that slower is better. Because at 830 feet per second, I never had one pellet destabilize. The groups tightened up despite the pellet going slower. And I know everyone wants to shoot faster and faster and faster. They figure the faster you can get it there, the less it can be impacted by the wind on the way there. Absolutely not true.
All right, so yeah, I saw that, and like I said, I respect Ted and look up to him, and he won the competition that year, so I took what he said and I immediately thought a few things. The first thing that I thought was, wait a minute, he just said that he found that 860 feet per second was an excellent speed to shoot the JSB King Heavy 25 grain, the 34 grain pellets, the 25 caliber 34 grain JSB pellets. Excuse me, sorry. But anyways, so he said that 860 was an excellent speed to shoot these pellets. And I thought immediately, well, the FX Impact certainly has enough tunability to sling the 34 grain pellets even faster than 860. So I thought, that's interesting, only 860. All right. And then the second thing that came to mind is I thought, wait a minute, you're telling me that in windy conditions, crazy windy conditions, that 830 was a better speed. So not only was, slower better and less affected by the wind, and it's taken even longer to get there, but that's even less energy in the end, and that's, the whole thing just boggled my mind. I thought, wait a minute, it was beneficial. It was a positive influence on the accuracy of the shot. That 30 feet per second made that much of a difference that you were able to notice a change in the consistency of your accuracy when grouping at 100 yards. And I thought, man, that's just insane. But that is what sparked everything for me to start tuning my guns differently. And so, like I said, utmost respect for the guy, and I owe it all to him that I miss less, I shoot my guns even further. Now that the guns are shooting more accurately, I've been able to concentrate and work more on things like trigger pull and even on trigger tunes, and really being able to see the differences and the influences of my tune on my shooting and the improvements that it's causing, you know. So I owe it all to him, and nothing but thanks for the guy for all he's done for the airgun community. But so anyways, my tuning took a 180, and now instead of tuning my guns leaning towards power and nothing but power and just taking the accuracy that I got in the end for what it is, now I tune my guns with nothing in mind but accuracy. And when I say these things, I also think it's only fair to say that these things really, and this type of tuning, it really only applies to longer range shooting. You know, and if you shoot just 30 yards, 40 yards and in, you know, these different velocity changes are not, you know, you're not going to see these changes as much. You know, there's not that much of an influence to see tremendous amount of changes at those yardages. So needless to say, a lot of these guns that I had that were tuned incredibly hot and shooting, you know, basically super hot, you know, as hot as I could get them, all of those guns began to shoot better once I lowered the velocity some. Some of them, it was just, you know, 30 feet per second, and then the group size improved. Some of them, it was, you know, 80 feet per second, 100 feet per second. And before I knew it, I was producing incredibly tighter groups. Like I said, I was having more control in the wind, especially with heavier pellets that retain energy better and have a better ballistic coefficient than lighter pellets. Really noticed differences in the way that the wind reacts with these heavier pellets at lesser velocities. So now my tuning velocity is that slower is better. And obviously there's got to be some low end where you get to a point where, you know, slow is too slow, obviously, and pellets begin to destabilize and things like that. But what I want you to consider, though, is that, you know, here's what somebody said to me. I was talking to one of the guys, and as a result of my tune on the 25 grain JSB pellets being around, you know, 820, 825 feet per second, that leaves me with a muzzle velocity of right around 750 for the King Heavies, the 34 grains. And so I was sharing this with a guy, and I even shot my video where I shot the 45 yards for bullseyes. I even used the King Heavies when I shot that, you know, and they're leaving the gun at a muzzle velocity of 750. So somebody said to me something along the lines of, "Wow, I didn't know that you could shoot pellets that slow and be that accurate." And you know, I probably would have agreed with that 2 years ago or whatever, you know, 3. I would have said for sure, you know, there was guns that I wouldn't even have attempted to purchase or shoot a really heavy grain weighted pellet, because in my own mind I just thought, you know, that's not going to work out. You know, I'm not going to be able to get them moving fast enough, and it's just not going to be any good, especially in the wind. You know, that was my thoughts. But lo and behold, so the FLASHPUP is a perfect example of what I'm talking about here. Now, I don't have the answers. I don't have the specific answers and reasons, you know. Obviously, with a harder hammer strike, you are producing more recoil. You know, there's so many different variables, you know, lesser and greater, you know, changes in barrel harmonics, changes in recoil, changes in stability of the pellet in different conditions, you know, at different speeds. You know, there's so many variables that come into play that I don't know. I really don't. But what I do know is that I record the data, and I have the targets, and I have the paper to prove it. You know, that's what I do have, and that's what I'm going off of. So I wanted to show you this. This is a 75-yard group out of the FLASHPUP using the JSB King 25 grain pellets. And this is a 20 shot group where I shot 10 shots and then topped back off to where I wanted to be, you know, and then shot 10 more, just so I knew that I was right with my, you know, keeping consistent velocities, you know, because I'm really trying to see what kind of consistency I could get out of the group, you know. So there's 20 shots there, and that was at a speed of like, you know, 865, 870, right around there. And that's about as hot as I could tune the FLASHPUP before, and still maintain somewhat of a power curve, you know, and not be on that Korean cliff. You know, and I have, you know, I try everything. You know, tuning an air gun is just a labor of love for me, and I try all kinds of stuff, you know. So I even had this pup shooting on a Korean cliff, you know, with the 25 grain pellets, all the way from like 930 on down with each shot, you know, losing about, you know, 8 to 10 feet per second per shot, and absolutely atrocious accuracy out of the gun at those velocities, and with that hard of a valve strike going on, you know. So, and also, you know, it might play somewhat of a role as far as when you are tuning the gun super hot, you are wasting so much air. You know, you have so much extra air coming out of the barrel after the pellet's already left, you know, and to what degree that affects, you know, the pellet's stability and early flight and stuff like that, I don't know. So like I said, I don't have the exact answers, but it's on the paper. So 75 yards, 20 shot group, like I said, 10 shots, top back off, 10 shots again, just to keep the velocities consistent. And this is what I got here, you know. So this is a, you know, just under a 2-inch group. And also, like I said, this is about as hot as I could tune the gun before reaching a Korean cliff. You know, this is still maintaining a power curve in the shot string, you know. So take a look real quick here at the shot string graphed out, and you can see what I'm talking about. So you can see on the graph, you know, you can see that this is probably from about 200 bar down to 110 or whatever, you know, so pretty much the whole tank of air. It's 30 shots total, and I consider my power curve to be 25 feet per second or less extreme spread. You know, I don't use any shots outside of a 25 feet per second spread. I don't consider that to be part of my power curve. And then at further ranges, I won't even use shots in the early or latter part of my power curve. You know, I'll use those real consistent shots at the peak of my power curve. So anyways, you take a look at this, you can see that there was 30 shots overall, and 18 of those shots fall into what I call my power curve, with a 25 feet per second extreme spread on those 18 shots. And you're getting about 7 or 8, sometimes maybe 9 to 10 of those shots in that power curve along the peak there, you know, with an extreme spread of about 10 feet per second. So that's with the gun, like I said, tuned about as hot as you can get it before you reach that Korean cliff. And so now, I showed you the group, like I said, 75 yards, about 860, 865 with the Kings. Now here is 20 shots at around 820, you know, maybe maxing out around 825. Same thing, 10 shots, top back off, 10 more shots, just to ensure that I'm using real consistent velocities. And you can obviously see the difference in the consistency. And not only is the 20 shot group, the overall spread on the group size, you know, it shrunk about 3/4 of an inch in overall spread size. But just look at the consistency. And this was with a little bit of tailwind on me too this day. And you can see by looking at the back of the targets, just compare the consistency, not even the overall group size, but just the consistency in this as opposed to this. And so that's what I'm experiencing in every single one of my guns when I tune them down some, is that I'm getting tighter groups. I'm getting smaller groups, and I'm experiencing more consistency in windy conditions and in weird conditions. Like I said, more predictability, and less anomalies and weird things happening that you know, where I'm kind of left in the dark and I'm kind of like, what happened there, you know. So more of a feeling of control over my shots, especially in these different conditions. And that's only because, like I said, I saw that video from him a couple years back, and then I started doing that. I started really velocity tuning at different velocities for group size, and I was amazed with the results that I found, you know, especially in different conditions that were more severe with wind. And more times than not, you don't find, when you're going out on a hunt, a perfectly calm day. You know, I love those days when you get out and it's just, you know, you could just drop a feather and it would fall straight down. But 9 times out of 10, there's either a breeze or some wind, you know. So more control, more consistency is the name of the game for me now. And if I can do anything to that air rifle to increase those two things without any consideration for foot pounds or shot count, then I'm happy. And whatever my shot count is, whatever I'm left with, that's just what I'm left with. And, you know, it used to be the opposite. You know, whatever foot pounds I'm left with now, that's just what I got, you know. I'm a small game hunter, you know, and in Wisconsin, we're not even allowed to shoot hogs or coyotes or anything like that with an air gun yet. You know, I say yet because I see in the foreseeable future that things are going to open up quite a bit more in that respect. But yeah, you know, we're not allowed to. So 18, 19 foot pounds still at a 100 yards I'm getting with a 25 grain pellet, you know, shooting it at 820, which is more than enough to take down anything, you know. And in reference to shooting slow, you know, like I said, I don't know when pellets begin to destabilize. You know, I've never done any comprehensive testing in that regard to try to find out when pellets actually destabilize. You know, and everything is so different from gun to gun and based on barrel length and twist rate, and you know, there's just so many variables. But just to show you, here's another group. This is a sub-inch group at 75 yards, and this is using the JSB King Heavy 34 grain pellets. This is a 6-shot group, and 4 of those shots darn near went through the same hole. So I just want you to consider that. These pellets left the muzzle at 750 feet per second roughly. You know, so at 75 yards, they were only traveling 610 feet per second roughly. So even at 610 feet per second, impacting the target at 75 yards, they still are flying completely stable. I mean, not even a slight, you know, notion that they might be losing stability. And like I said, I want to go as fast as I can go until those groups start to open up and I start to notice negative changes and groups opening up. So I'm not saying that I tune my guns slow, but I tune them as slow as I have to maintain that extreme long-range accuracy. You know, all my guns, like I said, they started shooting tighter groups, and none of my guns I would consider to be shooting slow. You know, so I wouldn't say I've tuned them down to slow, you know, or weak, you know. And when you think about things in regards of foot pounds, it's easy to think, you know, and it's really easy to compare things to firearms too, you know. I used to tune the heck out of my guns for foot pounds, you know, and I'd go to people and say, man, you know, I'm right up under your 22 long rifle in foot pounds, and I'm shooting a 25 caliber, or I'm shooting, you know, just a couple hundred feet per second right up under your 22 long rifle, you know. And that was what was more important to me than anything, you know. That was even kind of my bragging right. And now with all my guns, I'm even more proud to own them because my bragging right is their accuracy. And I was able, with things that I did and figured out, to find that point, you know, that range, that sweet spot, you know, that range where I could just pull, you know, that extreme accuracy out of the gun and really stretch it out to its fullest potential as far as yardage and everything, and really just get the most out of it. And I assure you that none of this has been achieved by tuning my guns to the ragged edge of their performance capabilities. And probably the only plus that I ever got out of that style of tuning was more foot-pounds. You know, because I actually was losing some accuracy. That was probably the only thing. That's the only positive. And now the way I tune my guns for accuracy, for extreme long-range accuracy, let's call it, the positives are endless. You know, less wear and tear on my rifles and on the moving and working parts, you know, because like I said, I'm not pushing them to the very ragged edge, you know, the brink of their performance capabilities. And as a result, more shots, you know, cleaner, better velocities in the shot string. And I'm going to show you in just a second the shot string from the 75-yard group that I shot, like I said, with the Kings going 820, you know, right around there. I'll show you that just to show you that also, you know, more shots in the shot string, better efficient use of the air, less wear and tear on the rifle, you know, more accuracy, the shots are quieter, and I realized that there was all these positive things that I gained by tuning my super hot PCP air guns down just a little bit. So this 75-yard group with the 34 grain JSP pellets, you know, that at 750, that's leaving the muscle at 42.5 foot-pounds of energy. So when it's striking the target at 75 yards and it's only moving 610 feet per second roughly, you know, that's still like 28 foot-pounds of energy or something. That's more than enough to, I mean, a well-placed shot is what's really important. You know, that the guys with the sub 12 foot-pound guns over in Europe and stuff, you know, they can attest to that. You know, as far as how many foot-pounds it takes to actually humanely dispatch different things, you know, so that's still, like I said, 28 foot-pounds of energy at 75 yards, and that's 6 shots within an inch, you know. So in my opinion, you couldn't ask for more in the accuracy. And like I said, you know, I haven't added up the foot-pound. You know, I figured it out for this video, and that was it. I haven't done a foot-pound calculation in so long because it's just become that irrelevant to me. And like I said, now my bragging right is my accuracy in my guns, you know, and my bragging right in my tuning, in the way that I tune, and in the time that I've taken and invested, and the money I've spent in pellets, all that stuff. Anyways, man, let me just get to showing you how to adjust this hammer spring right after I show you this this graphed out shot string. So, like I said, we got the 75-yard group at 865, 870, and I showed you that graphed out, that shot string. And then we got the increased accuracy at 75 yards, smaller group, more consistency, less weird things going on in the wind, and we were at about 820, 825. So take a look at the graphed out shot string for this group with the FLASHPUP tuned like this. You can see overall the shots increased when shooting from 200 bar down to 100 bar. You can see overall that I got 40 shots instead of 30, so more shots overall. My 25 feet per second power curve consists of 22 shots versus 18 when the gun was tuned hotter. And I've got 16 shots in this power curve with an extreme spread of 10 feet per second or less, you know. So that's 16 shots almost regulated, you know, and that's great. So there's definitely some benefits, especially from an accuracy standpoint and even a practicality standpoint when it comes to hunting. So I would say at 75 yards, I like to keep my feet per second spread no more than 10 or 12 or whatever, you know. So to have 16 shots out of a $400 gun that is that hand pump friendly because of its small reservoir, you know, to have 16 shots with a 10 feet per second spread and have the kind of accuracy where I can keep the FLASHPUP well under a half of an inch at 50 yards, that's excellent in my opinion. And that is not the way that the gun was shooting out of the box by any means. And it certainly is not the way that the gun shoots when it was tuned hotter. So there you have it. And you know, like I said, nothing against any type of tuning style or what anybody does, to each his own. You know, if you showed up at my house today with the newer Gauntlet 25 cal, and you had drilled out your transfer ports, and you were shooting slugs, and you were producing you know, 90 foot-pounds of energy, I would be wowed, and I would say that's impressive. You know, so I'm not saying in any way that there's a right and a wrong. You know, to each his own, and to each of us as our own needs and wants come into play. You know, that is a good tune, as long as it's what you want and you reach your goals, then that's a good tune on that air rifle, in my opinion. But I wanted to share that, and you know I get to ranting and raving and talking kind of lengthily about things, but I just love air guns, and I love air gunning, and I, you know, sometimes I gotta kind of check myself, because I get to thinking in my own mind, you know, like I could just talk for hours about this stuff. So let's get to you know, making some adjustments here on the hammer spring, and showing you how to do that real quick, and then we'll close out the video. So let's get to it. Alright, so making adjustments to the preload tension on the hammer spring strike for the FLASHPUP is actually really simple, but you do have to remove the gun from the stock in order to be able to access these places where you make these adjustments. So the first thing you're going to do is get a number 2 Phillips and take out the 2 stock screws that hold the gun into the stock. And there's one that goes in the back side right into this post, and one that goes into a nut that fits right in here in this little slot. So I've already removed the 2 stock screws and set this nut to the side that fits in the slot here. And you know, I'm not going to show you that. It's pretty self-explanatory. But I always set the nut to the side just so it doesn't fall out of that slot and get lost, or, you know, caught up in here or whatever. So, like I said, the first thing you're going to need to do is take it and get your stock screws out and get the gun freed up from the stock. Now, when I make adjustments in tuning, I like to do it in the gun rest. You know, on the bench and in the gun rest and in the stock. That's how I do it. And I'll tell you why. So, it's for safety reasons mostly. But I've got just a wooden dowel here that I wrapped in some electrical tape, and I just did that to kind of cushion it, because I don't want to mar or scuff up the stock in any kind of way. So what I do is, once I've got them stock screws out and I'm all set up and in position, you know, and I'm gonna make my adjustments and do my tuning, I take this wooden dowel, I just lift it up like this, and I slip it in here right up under the gun and let it rest like that. So that way it's just up and out of the stock a little bit, and the whole trigger assembly is still inside the stock, so to speak. You know, it's still recessed down in there where it's not out and in the open. And there's 2 reasons why I do it this way. So I make all my adjustments from here, just like this, with this stick in here. And then after I make the adjustments, just pull the stick and drop the stock back down in, load my pellet, and take my shot. So if you were to be making adjustments you know, making hammer adjustments on your hammer spring with the FLASHPUP, and you had it out of the stock, you know, inadvertently you're going to end up handling on this linkage and stuff, you know. And I don't want to put a bunch of pressure and be reefing on this linkage all the time. And with as much tuning and playing around as I've done with the FLASHPUP, I definitely just avoid grabbing onto it and putting pressure here or on any of these, you know, parts of the gun. And the other reason is because when you make your adjustment, you're going to loosen a set screw that holds the screw in place on the inside of your hammer that you turn in and out. When that set screw is turned out, it's not recessed or flush with the hammer anymore, and it's sticking out, and you've got this little hole. So let's just say 2 reasons. One, you might accidentally fire the gun at any time, and if you've got a pellet loaded into the barrel, who knows where that pellet's going to go if you weren't ready to take that shot at that moment. Because when you're handling the gun this way, you've disabled the safety. So I've got the safety on and the trigger can't be pulled. But let's say I cock the gun, and now I'm making my adjustments and stuff, and I accidentally bump this or squeeze onto it too hard. Even though my safety's on, look at that. Now the gun just went off with no more than a bump to the trigger assembly here. I was able to release the sear. So I don't ever want that to happen on accident or at the wrong time. So that's why I do it in the stock, And heaven forbid if somehow, you had that set screw out and you were making an adjustment and then the gun accidentally went off. You can just imagine what that's going to do in here as the hammer tries to go forwards and that set screw's sticking out. It's just going to be ugly and you're going to really screw things up. So those are the reasons why I do it that way, because I feel it's the safest. And, so for safety reasons, and like I said, also because I don't want to take the chance of that hammer letting loose while that adjustment screw is in the out position, because it's going to cause some damage into the gun, maybe even damage, the set screw and the threading and stuff like that. So I avoid that at all costs, and I just tune the gun like this in the rest, partially out of the stock, I guess. So the first thing you're going to do, when I get it up and I stick my dowel into there, and I've got the gun rested up. If you notice on the back end of the rifle here, there's an end cap. And that end cap is actually holding the back end of your hammer spring in place. That end cap is threaded into the breech block, so it's adjustable to some degree. I prefer to have mine as far back and out as I can get it, protruding from the breech block as far back as I can get it, and even making contact slightly with the back edge of the stock as it slips in and it's fitted down and into the stock. It's even making just the slightest amount of contact up against the back of the stock there. So that's where I like mine, and you'll have to experiment and play with it and stuff like that and see what works best for you. If you're going with a really hot tune or a hotter tune and you're shimming your hammer spring or just cranking, your adjustment screw way out, then I would recommend setting this end cap as far back as you can, because it's just going to relieve some of the cocking tension in there and allow you to get that bolt all the way back far enough to engage the sear and let it grab hold. So now you see that end cap and there's a hole in the back of it. So in order to make these adjustments on the tension of your hammer spring, like I said, you've got to remove the stock screw, so you need a number 2 Phillips screwdriver to do that. And then in order to make your adjustments, you need a 2mm Allen key and you need a 4mm Allen key. And that's all you're going to need. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the rifle up, whatever you do. Even if you make your adjustments out of the stock, that's fine, to each his own. I'm just showing you how I do it. So now that the gun is up here and I've exposed this back end cap, and if you look closely, you can see that there's a hole right here on the side of the bolt handle channel there. Right below it, there's another little hole. What happens and what you want to do is you want to cock the gun all the way in the fully cocked position. And then what I do is just return the bolt to its home position forward. And I use the single loading tray when I'm doing my tuning like this, because I don't want a pellet in the breech until I'm going to shoot, and if I was using the magazine, just by returning the bolt to home, I would have already put a pellet into the breech, and the gun would actually be, technically fireable, and there's a projectile in there, and I'm not ready to shoot yet. So that's why I don't use the magazine when I'm doing this kind of tuning. So we've got the bolt forward and in the locked position. And what that did when we cocked the bolt back is it exposed the set screw for the screw that's in the center of the hammer. And that's how you access this set screw in order to loosen it up so that that set screw in the inside of the hammer can be turned clockwise and counterclockwise, and you can make your adjustments. So basically, you've got the screw in here like this, and then you've got the tiny set screw on the side, and it comes in through the hammer and kisses up against the threads of that inside screw, that adjustment screw, and it just holds it and secures it in place after you've made your adjustments so that it can't move, you know, from the vibrations of the shot and different things. That way it's locked in place. And when you tighten that back down, all it takes is just, you know, kissing it up against the threads. You don't have to crank it down or anything. Just real lightly, you know, feel it against the threads and give it just that little extra snug or whatever. So I'm going to go in now into this hole with my 2mm Allen key and get it into the set screw, and I'm just going to turn it out a couple turns. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is leave the 2mm Allen key just sitting in there like that while I'm making my other adjustment, just because then it ensures that I don't forget to put that other set screw back in before I you know, load a pellet and go to make my shot over the chronograph. Because, like I said, you do not want that bolt to go forward while that set screw is out and protruding, because there's hardly no clearance there at all, and it's going to get hung up and it's going to smack hard, and it's just, you know, it might be kind of ugly. So I leave it in there like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take your 4mm Allen key and you're going to go right through the back of the air rifle, through that end cap that I showed you. And you're going to go right through the spring, all the way through it, until you feel the Allen key engage into the hex key of the set screw that's in there in the center. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be turning it clockwise, and that's going to be bringing that screw into the hammer deeper, and it's going to be relieving tension on the spring. Or you're going to turn it counterclockwise, and you're going to be bringing it out in this direction, and then you're going to be putting more tension onto your hammer spring. So that's how it works. So right now, I'm just going to leave, I'm going to take the 4mm Allen key out of there. I'm going to tighten back my set screw on the side here that holds it, that in place inside the hammer. And then I'm going to take my dowel out, slip her back into the stock, and I'm going to use the 25 grain JSB pellet for this. So now I'm going to load my pellet, and I'm just going to do this because I want to see where I'm at, because I cranked on the screw a little bit here, so I don't really know where I'm at. So let's take a shot, safety off. So 775. So the JSB King just reached a velocity where the hammer spring is at right now with its strike right now, and with the amount of pressure and balance that's in the tank, we produced a velocity of 775 feet per second. So let's say I want to tune the gun hotter. I want to increase my velocity, which means I need to increase the preloaded tension on that hammer spring. So what I've got to do is I've got that internal, inside the hammer in the center, that set screw, I've got to turn it out, and I've got to bring it, I'm going to turn it counterclockwise, and I'm going to bring it out in this direction. And what that's going to do is put more preloaded tension on the hammer spring, so that when it releases and fires, it's going to fire and move forward with even more energy, because, you know, there's more spring tension behind it then because of the adjustment that we made. All right, so I'm going to take my wooden dowel, lift her up and get it in there. Now what I'm going to do is cock the gun all the way and engage the sear, bring it back forward and lock it into place. Now I'm going to come in here on the side of the hammer, and I'm going to give this set screw a couple turns counterclockwise and bring it out away from the threads of that screw inside the hammer. And now I'm going to take the 4mm Allen key like I just showed you, and I'm going to slip it in to that hole through the spring and all the way till it's engaged into the hex of the set screw. And now, like I said, I'm going to turn it counterclockwise, and that's going to bring that screw out. So right now we're straight up and down with the Allen key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this around one full turn, and then I'm going to go another, let's just go 2 full turns out. So with no regard to where I was before or how many turns out from home I was, let's just keep in mind that I turned it out 2 turns, so I'm increasing the preload tension on my hammer spring, and then the end result is we're going to get a harder hammer strike on the valve, we're going to release more air, and the pellet is going to have a faster velocity than what it just had at 775 because of this adjustment. So I made my adjustment with my 4mm Allen key, took it out. Now I'm going to make sure that I snug back down this set screw for the adjustment screw inside the hammer. And now I'm going to get it back down and into the stock. And now I'll bring it back and lock the bolt in the rear locking position just so I can load up a pellet into the tray. And now we've got our pellet loaded. Let's see where we're at now. 822. So you can see that with just 2 turns out from where we were at on the hammer spring, and by adding that much more preloaded tension to that hammer spring, we were able to gain almost 50 feet per second in velocity. And so that's how it works. And the same thing, you know, just in reverse, if you were wanting to decrease your velocities. I'm going to cock the bolt back, lock it back forward in the front position, loosen my set screw with my 2mm Allen key, and now I'm going to get that 4mm key in there, and now I'm going to bring the hammer spring back in, and this time I'm going to bring it in. Remember, we brought it out 2 turns, so I'm going to bring it in 2.5. So now I've just decreased the preload tension on the hammer spring to even less than we were at originally. So we should see a lesser velocity than 775, which was our original. So let's see where we're at. There you go. And you can just see that was just a little so 720. So now think about this. At that point, just that extra half a turn in, just relieving a half a turn's worth of tension off of that hammer spring, brought that velocity all the way down from 775 to 720. So that's how you make your adjustments, and that's how you change your velocities for your different pellets, and that's how you make your adjustments so you can tune your gun to a certain velocity, to a certain specific pellet, and find the best velocity that works the best for that given pellet and your barrel's twist rate and, you know, everything that's involved. So I hope that was simple and straightforward, and now you can make adjustments on your gun. Always be safe, you know, always keep safety in mind, first and foremost before anything else. And a couple other things I thought that I should clarify too, based on some of the stuff that I just said a minute ago. When I was talking about shooting these different groups, you know, these velocity changes in the groups and in the group size, I don't want you to think when looking at the graphs that the fluctuations in feet per second, which were a little bit greater on the hotter tune in the power curve, are what caused this. Because I've also done, you know, this testing was done unregulated, but I've also done this kind of testing with the gun regulated, and same thing. You know, I found that the groups, when using the JSB King 25 grains, anything over like 835, and the groups just start to open up. They just do. So, you know, that's more recoil, pellet instability, you know, different air going through the quiet energy system, and stripping and different things, you know. So what it is, I don't know, but like I said, the proof is on the paper. And so I just encourage you to give it a whirl, you know, and give it a try. And, you know, if you're willing to invest the time and the pellets, you know, into it, give it a shot, you know, especially if you want to really stretch out with your guns and shoot long range, you know, and see what they're truly capable of as far as holding real consistency in real tight groups. Especially, like I said, when shooting heavier pellets with a higher ballistic coefficient, and pellets that are retaining more energy. Especially when using those pellets in the wind and stuff, I just urge you to do some experimentation and try some things out, you know, and see what you come up with. I think you might actually be amazed with the results, and see that there's so much more in each particular gun to everything than just, you know, am I within the ranges of speed as far as, you know, known speed, pellet stability type of things, you know, like not getting too close to that subsonic region or whatever, you know. There's a lot more stuff going on in between there, you know, in that good range that we've kind of coined, you know, to the industry as a good range to shoot Diabolo pellets, you know, or whatever. So, oh, and one more thing. Also, everything that I've said here is completely contradictory when it comes to shooting cast bullets. You know, I found that when shooting cast bullets, faster is better. So none of this applies to any of that. You know, this is just all about pellets. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that was helpful for you. And maybe you learned something. Maybe you got a little nudge in a certain direction, you know, just to kind of take on more and take your tuning to another level, and just to see what you come up with. You know, it's a lot of fun, and I love air gunning. And all the time that I invest and the money I spend is well spent. You know, it's time well spent and it's money well spent, because, like I said, I love air gunning, I love hunting, and I want to hunt the best I can. I want to hunt the most accurate that I can, and more than anything, I want to get the most that I can, dollar for dollar, out of every air gun that I've purchased. So that's what it's all about for me. So to all my brothers out there, happy shooting, and we'll see you next time. I got a cool trigger tune video coming up next, and I got this trigger, man, just butter. You know, just solid, super clean break, super light and safe and solid, and just I'm real excited to share the trigger tune with you. So we'll do that next. All right, so see you next time.